You want to learn how to save money and feel more secure? By the end of this episode, you'll see how an entrepreneur, a psychologist, and a creative live frugally.
We're here to talk about bread, lettuce, cheese, dead presidents, green.
It's just money, man. It's just money.
Hey, let's start with telling some stories, guys, about our experiences living frugally. Jared, you got a story to share with us?
Oh, do I have a story? I sat down and I thought, well, there's bound to be a story. Maybe I don't have a story. How do you live frugally? What have I done to live frugally? And all of a sudden I started to get self-conscious. And about 30 seconds later, because that's all it took to get self-conscious, all this I was like, oh yeah, there was that one time I ate that other person's food at a restaurant that they left on the table because I saw never touched it. And seemed like a waste. And I was like, well, no, my wife would be like, don't tell that story. So I'm not going to tell that story. So then I thought, well, what about the time I wrecked that van that I borrowed? And then I stayed up for 4 days straight learning how to do carbon fiber or whatever and redo and sand down the van and paint it and everything. Just so, because I didn't have any money to pay them back. That's kind of embarrassing, and I never told them. So then I thought, what else could I tell? How about the time I went to go buy a piece of furniture at an estate sale, and they said, "Well, no, sorry, we didn't mean to communicate this. This is you have to take all the furniture or none of the furniture." And I'd offered them $1,500 for this really nice piece of furniture, and I said, "Well, if I do that, I guess we'll give you $1,000. There's about $35,000 worth of furniture." And they were like, you just offered us $1,500 for this one piece. Why would you offer us less money for all of it? And I was like, because I don't want all of it. I marked out all of the furniture. We were loading furniture because it had to be out that weekend or that next day till 4:00 in the morning. I called like 12 people in. So I was just thinking about all these ridiculous stories that I've lived through. And in the end of the day, the most easy and simple story for me that has made probably the biggest difference living frugal is I actually recently just went to T-Mobile. I didn't know much about T-Mobile. I walked in the T-Mobile store and I said, please tell me about your phone plans. And come to find out, they had a military discount of like 50% off. My family's a military family. Everybody's on my family plan in order to have the cheapest phone service anyways. We were able to save 50% about on our monthly phone bill. And we've done this multiple times. About every 2 to 3 years, I've saved hundreds of dollars, a month. So usually thousands of dollars a year, just over the years. And every 3 to 4 years, we've done it. I remember when we switched from T-Mobile to AT&T, they literally paid us $2,400 to switch over our 10 phone lines. We didn't have a phone bill for 8 months. Really just reviewing what you're spending and are there better ways to spend that money?
Wow.
How did you find out about that? Like, how did you know?
I didn't. I walked into the store and I just told them kind of what I had. And I said, is there any way you can, can I save money here? Validated it with my own research because, just trust some salesman.
No, that's great. That actually ties into my living frugal story too, which I didn't realize until you just said it. But like, as somebody who's always lived nearly paycheck to paycheck, just because that's how I started out, and I never really started saving initially, until last few years. So I would always be interested in the newest phones, whatever service they were on, and so I would cancel my contract to move over to this next plan to get a new phone. And there's always the extra charges at first. So one of the things that I decided to do was to see what it was like to just hold on to a phone for as long as possible. And so when I finally realized, I was kind of wasting money, I went on a phone plan that was 3 years versus the normal 2 years. What I did was hold on to it, and that proved that I can just hold on to that phone for my initial contract, but I kept holding on to my phone even when I would drop it and crack the screen and like everything wrong with it. But like, this was sort of my test of living frugal without realizing it. And that saved me so much money, especially when you hold on to your phone past your contract, like no matter what that is, you're saving an extra $30-$40 a month just from when you finish. So it's like you kind of see that reward also. And that, I think that's sort of a gateway, like the cell phone is a gateway way to save money.
there's actually a lot of opportunities because there's a lot of competition to save money.
Right. And yeah, I think the idea of like when I always wanted the phone, you're like, oh, the technology is so good. You know, it's got the newest cameras, it's got the newest everything. But then you hold on to your phone for a while and you're just kind of like, you know, I'm good with what this is. Like, it doesn't need to be any faster. It doesn't need to be.
But it's not the greatest iPhone since the last iPhone.
Right. And that's how I used to be, which was so nuts to me. Like, then I eventually had like 4 phones, like just stocked away in my house. And I'm like, I'm not even doing anything with these. It was just kind of a waste, you know?
Yeah. Maybe I feel like what it's like to be our audience when we like talk about what you should be doing. And all of a sudden you hear somebody say what you're not doing. And they're like, feel bad about themselves, because I'm like, everything you guys just said is the opposite of me. I have the new laptop. I'm using it right now. I have the newest phone. I just got my new TV. I'm like, literally everything you listed. That's my hobby. Like,
right.
And to be fair, I'm exceptionally frugal in all of this, and most people just let me do my thing, including my wife. For instance, I really wanted a Mac back in like 2000 and I don't know, 5, 6, 7, something like that. And so I researched Macs. I was not willing to spend any money though. I haven't wanted no college debt, but I knew the market. And I went into this store one day, and the campus store, and they had 4 Macintosh desktop computers for sale. And they was like $379 or something. And I was like, I think there's kind of a demand for these. But I got 4 friends, went in, and I gave each of them $400, and we bought all 4 Macs. And I sold the other 3 on eBay, which came out to be literally within like $10 of the total amount, and I got to keep the 4th. So this started a long line of me buying and selling Mac computers. So I was almost always up to date. I would stay a year behind every year. And I would always sell mine, but then I would buy 2 or 3 others and sell them too to get to the total price. I guess that's a really great tip. You don't know what you don't know you can do till you've done it. Like, I was forced out of need to live this cheap, but I wanted something. I didn't go out and get a credit card and buy it. I figured out how to get it. And not a lot of things will stop me from getting what I want at that point.
I do want to say real quick, like, I'm not trying to criticize anybody who's, you know,
criticize me.
But I do think, you know, there's something to be learned. And the only reason I feel like I can give advice is because I feel like I've failed so many times at that.
Right. So it just says, like, that's why these conversations are important. So we have more categories to think about. Then we find the ones that work for us of how to be frugal. Speaking of strange categories, my story. So as those who have listened to our podcast before, I am way overeducated. And so I spent
2 years,
8 years in grad school. And grad school, you don't make a lot of money. And in that time, I got married and we had 3 kids. So we had to live real frugally. And so the first crazy story is so I asked my father-in-law, who was my father-in-law, if I could, you know, marry his daughter, my wife. And one of the first things he said to me is like, hey, as soon as you can, buy a house, because it's good for, you know, finances, which that's questionable whether it is or not. But
just sounds like a stall tactic. I want to say no, so instead I'll say buy a house.
No, he had already said yes. And so I was like, all right. So it sat in the back of my head. I started looking. I found this townhouse. It was a short sale in like 2010 for like $45,000 or something. And we're like, okay, let's see if we can, you know, can we get approved for the loan or whatever? And we got pre-approved and we saw places, and then it like totally failed, like the actual approval, because we were in grad school. We didn't make any money. Like, I don't know what I was thinking, but then because the price was so low, it was actually cheaper for us to do it. You know, family who was able to come in and help us buy it. But it was actually cheaper to live there buying that place than it would have been for us to rent like a 1-bedroom. And it was like a 2-bedroom with the full basement or whatever.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
So which is nuts, because it also needed rehab, and we were we had just gotten married. We're in the middle of a master's program in counseling. We were rehabbing a house. I mean, it was a crazy time, but we did it. And it was right with the like the whole like stimulus. We got $5,000 from the government for buying a house, and so which helped us like rehab it so we could live in it because it was nasty. It was pretty nasty.
That's kind of
I think that's the important part because everybody. I'm imagining you buying like this fancy townhome. Well, I think like
it's not. It's still not fancy. I mean, we sold it last year, but it's a struggling neighborhood. But it got us through grad school because it like our cost of living was real low.
Yeah.
And then a real crazy story. So
that's semi crazy.
My wife, you know, God bless her soul for being so gracious to me. So I had an old car and so it was kind of going out. So we ended up selling it. We had a 1-car family. I rode my bike to campus, which was like 45 minutes. It's like, hey, it's great. Save money, no insurance, no
gym,
taxes, no gym. Yeah, exactly. And then winter in Kansas happened, and I did it on the bike, but it was freaking cold.
Wow, that is crazy.
Brutal. And so, but in this whole time, I've been eyeing this vehicle, which is a bicycle technically, but it's electric.
Oh my gosh.
And it is covered, and I will put a picture of it right here so our audience can see it. But it's called an Elf, which is like the most ridiculous name.
You actually got the Elf. I've seen pictures of a Elf.
Elf, yeah. So it stands for electrical, fun, light and fun. So it's a 3-wheel bicycle, but with it has a cover, and you can even buy doors for it. Mine didn't have doors. Because at this point, I was working part-time, so I had to go to an office, which was a different direction from campus, and they were both about at least 20 to 40 minutes away. And so I talked about this thing for a year, researching it. And one day when I'm talking about it again, my wife goes, why don't you just buy it? He said, I don't want you to be 80 years old and saying, why did I ever do this? And so we're in grad school. I find one on eBay for like $4,000. They usually sell for like 8 to 10. And so I buy it off eBay, which is kind of nuts because I didn't ever see it. And they delivered. It was in pretty good shape. A few things I had to fix. And I ride it for a year. And at first, it was amazing. And then it just, it kind of wore on you because you don't go that fast. But if you want attention, it's the best vehicle ever. I've never had so many pictures taken of me by random people in my life. I felt like I was a celebrity.
I can't tell if this is a story about living frugally or getting tomatoes thrown at you for your. It's like,
yeah, or a mistake of living frugal, an attempt to live frugal led to not necessarily not frugal, but not as the big lesson here was how to be attention seeking.
I want to judge you for those actions, but at the same time, it is like you saved a lot of money versus buying a car, which would have been bigger investment. So you had to do what you had to do, and so like I commend you for that part, but at the same time, I can't help but judge a little bit.
So to finish the story, so I rode the Elf for a year. Got pictures taken and posted on Facebook. Like my sister called me one day. It's like, are you on Facebook again? I was like, no. It's like, well, your picture is. This is like a friend of hers saw me and took a picture of me.
Wow.
So she saw my face. It's like, what is this crazy thing on the road? So I rode it for a year, but by then I needed a car because I had a longer commute and I was kind of done with it. Because I had the experience. That was the thing for me. It's like, I wanted to do it not just to save money, but to do the experience, but I had to do it in a way that we didn't have money to buy it. So I ended up selling it, which was amazing, on Craigslist to a guy who lived like 2 blocks away. We got a good deal, $2,500. But then I did the calculation, and all the money I saved without paying insurance or taxes for a year, it came out to like right at $4,000. I like broke even on this.
Yep. Which is actually the goal, right?
Right, but I walked away with all these crazy stories and this amazing experience.
Well, and not to mention, you probably appreciate being in a car more than most of us do.
Yes, air conditioning and being able to go in heat and going 75 miles an hour is amazing.
I just did similar things. I remember buying a 49cc moped or whatever you call it. So so I didn't have to license it or like insure it, and I could go on sidewalks if I wanted because it's in a college town. And so then that way I didn't have to have a car. I shouldn't admit to this. So I had $100 allowance for gas, and I bought this little moped. I doubt my dad will be surprised, but I think he might be a listener here. So, Dad, earmuffs. And I had $100 allowance for gas. And I'm sure he knows something was up because every month it was exactly $100, no matter what, like to the penny. I would like go into the gas station and be like, I need $1.48, and I put it in. But I would put it in all my friends' cars, and then they would give me cash so that I could.
I do have a quick story about how I learned to live frugally in some aspects. When I was younger, I bought a Honda. That was my first car that I ever purchased. It was like $5,000. And I wanted to spruce up just the stock radio. So I bought like a nicer, fancier radio. And being like an old Honda, I didn't realize how easy they are to break into. And so I got it stolen. But then when I went to buy a new fancy radio, that one also got stolen. And this happened like one more time for a total of 3 times before I realized, okay, I don't need a fancy radio. I just what the stock was, and now I'm not getting the money. Yeah, so for the first tip on saving money or living frugally, our world is moving faster and faster each year, and things get updated and newer things come out, and we're always, enticed to go buy them. But where, I'm in filmmaking and I always wanted to have the newer camera that came out, and there are cameras that keep getting fancy, but it's like, no, it's the talent behind the camera that can really make a solid product. So really work with what you have and understanding like the thing you have in front of you versus always wanting to get more can help you out in the long run. And it puts more value on yourself as a person versus the object.
For tip number 2, I really wanted to talk about the difference between being cheap and being frugal. But someone who's cheap, they're focused only on the price. So they'll pick the cheapest thing no matter what. But someone who's frugal is not looking at price per se, but they're looking at value. Sometimes buying the more expensive thing is actually the better value. For example, is a couch. If you need to buy a couch, you can go get the cheapest couch at IKEA or something. But I have 3 kids. They'll beat that couch up in about 6 months. But so sometimes spending more money on a nicer couch, it will last longer. I actually would spend less money over the long run by buying the more expensive couch. So that is being frugal versus being cheap.
My tip, if you have people you're close enough to, I currently share with both my in-laws and my parents, and so we have a family plan on Apple with, you can put up to 6 people, but we share Apple Music. We have YouTube TV we all share because up to 3 devices can stream. We just don't overlap. And through Apple TV, we pay for some of the specialty channels. So if you're really into PBS and so is your family, you can pay on the family person's account, one account, and then everybody gets access to it up to those 6 people. So we really share all of those types of things. You need to be able to just reach out, find people. You have to do a little bit of work, reach out, find people who will share, and you can save $100 to $300 a month, no problem. So for our game, we're going to be talking about food consumption, because right now, as all of our incomes are changing and lots of people are losing their jobs or going on unemployment, we're talking about bank it and budget it if you're getting extra money from unemployment. Well, one of the areas that is really has come up on It's Just Money Live as questions is, kind of how much money should I spend on food? How should I budget? So I just decided to hyper focus in on one of the most important budgets we all have, which is food. So my first question for you guys is, so according to Sterling Price in 1900, 40% of our income was spent on food. In 1950, 30% of our income was spent on food. In 2013, what percentage do you pick is spent on food?
25.
Raul?
I'm going 60.
10.
Oh.
Food, and that's something, if you've heard, food has continued to get cheaper and cheaper.
See, I was going the opposite. I thought it was a trick question, and I thought that because we have places like Whole Foods, food is more expensive.
So no, actually, historically, food's at all-time lows, and it's a little counterintuitive. We have the nicer quality food now, almost, and it's way more accessible and at cheaper rates than like in all of human history. On average, how much do you believe family or household spends on food annually? Less than 5,000, more than 7,000, or in between?
See, so I picked the higher price before. I'm going over 7, you said?
I'll say between 5 and 7.
Okay, so technically you're both right. Matt is the winner. The average household spends $6,602 on food. So it's 2-0. However, Raul, I will say it is a bit of a trick question because in the average family, they go out to eat a little bit more, and objectively, it's about 60% grocery shopping and 40% going out to eat for the average household. But for those who have higher incomes, they tend to go out to eat a little bit higher. So how much more does a family who makes more money go out to eat? So what do you think the new percentage split is?
You guys, I went into the creative field to get away from math.
I'll go 50-50.
I'm going 70-30 out to eat.
So what's crazy is it's only a 5% increase on the averages. So just a 5% increase of going out to eat makes a massive difference on your budget. So sometimes we just think we have to make these huge changes in our lives, but a small change, as little as 45% going out to eat to 40%, makes a huge impact. And the other big thing was, Raul, you were dead on, so I'll give you a point for that, is
Hey.
the difference between buying a steak and buying something cheaper at the store is massive. So I just kind of looked at the analysis of people who make less, and so they have to spend their money more frugally. They basically kind of showed you actually still could eat pretty healthy, but there was just small tips and tricks that you could do to really make a big difference. When you cook at home, focus on the staples. They tend to buy more eggs, rice, beans. But one of the tips they said was buying dry beans and soaking them yourself is so much cheaper. You get so much more value, like dollar value of food versus buying like a canned food. So I just never really considered like buying a bucket of quinoa. I went and looked up the prices. It's insane. You can buy a 50-pound bucket so cheap versus when you buy these little bags, it's so expensive. And quinoa is a superfood. So all of a sudden I started looking at it, and there's so many dry foods you can buy that you could drive down your price. And it just made me realize you could eat healthy and you could cook at home and you could make it so much more economical. And right now there could be people out there who are really struggling with their incomes and losing stuff. And this would be a great time to not be the cheapest. Don't buy the $2 bag of quinoa. Look to buy a 50-pound bucket of quinoa.
A bucket of quinoa. Another question for us?
So I think these last
question.
Oh, there's one more.
Yes, and we're going to make this bonus round. Bonus round. Bing, 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 bing. So Raul has a chance to beat you, Matt.
Oh, no.
3 points, which will put him in the lead.
Ooh. Like an owl.
How much could one save if they cut out like going to big coffee chains like Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts with reasonable estimates on a person?
The average person or something?
Over a decade.
Over a decade?
Okay.
Well, that's tricky, math.
Since I'm one for the dramatics, I'll say 10 grand.
11 grand.
Raul takes his first win of all games. It was only 5,000 to 7,000.
Oh, wow.
Over a decade.
Okay.
That makes you feel a little better about spending money on coffee.
It makes you feel better.
We don't actually get coffee that often. So.
I'm only spending $5,000 every decade. You know, it's fine.
Thank you for listening or watching It's Just Money. We hope you enjoyed the episode. If so, please subscribe so you don't miss out.
Also, leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts. If you have any suggestions for future episodes, please comment below.
But remember, it's just money.